Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. All right, folks, we got a lot to talk about. The Vols need a tackle. We need one bad. We're going to talk about the Pat McAfee saga, and then, of course, Michigan for all the marbles.
It's got to be America's team.
Woo, we got a big night tonight. We got Michigan versus Washington for all the marbles. It couldn't be bigger. We've talked a lot about Michigan and the whole sign-stealing thing, and now it all comes down to this game and who's going to win. And rather than me predict it, because I've been wrong the last two games, I thought Texas would beat Washington, and then I thought Alabama would beat Michigan.
Wrong.
So I'm 0 for 2 on those playoff games. So, I don't know who's going to win this game. To me, it's 50-50. Washington's got that great offense, but Michigan's got a totally good team all the way around. And the J.J. McCarthy is a rock-solid quarterback. He's probably not as good as Michael Penix, but I'll tell you what, he's a darn good quarterback. He's going to be playing on Sundays, probably a first- or second-round pick himself. And he's very much a dual threat, so it should be a fantastic game. I'm really looking forward to it. Washington with that big offensive line, those receivers. Michigan with their just bulliness. Is that a word, bulliness? Anyway, it's going to be awesome to see what happens. Then we get to see what happens with the NCAA, what they're going to do with this whole situation. It's going to go, man, I'm telling you, the next several weeks after that and months is going to be very interesting, to say the least. So 7:30 tonight. All right, folks, now we're going to talk about this whole Pat McAfee situation with ESPN, Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, is heavily involved in all this. And this has been darn near a scandal, this entire situation. And this all started out, I remember when the first, the feud between Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Kimmel began, because Kimmel started making a bunch of fun of him on his late night show and telling a bunch of jokes about Aaron Rodgers and really getting on him about the poke. And, you know, you got to watch what you say on YouTube. But anyway, he was making a lot of sport of him based on that because he wasn't necessarily for it. So that started the feud, that whole situation. And recently, and you'll see in this article, the Aaron Rodgers feud is just getting started. And it's because Rodgers joked that he was worried about the Epstein list coming out and being made public, and they were kind of laughing about it and doing all that. Well, Jimmy Kimmel didn't think it was funny, neither did ESPN. So Jimmy fired back that he was going to sue him if he kept saying those types of things. And I actually watched quite a bit of the defense attorneys that talked about it, and they said he really doesn't have a case. He's a public figure, and a joke is a joke, and that it would be very difficult for him to win a case like that. But still, you know, I mean, he threatened him because he didn't appreciate it, which I didn't think either joke on either side was funny personally, you know, but who am I to say? I'm all the time putting funny crap in my videos. So anyway, it got serious between the two of them. They obviously can't stand each other. Well, Pat McAfee was kind of in the middle because he has Aaron Rodgers on his show, and Aaron comes on once a week, and Pat McAfee's making $17 million, or is it $18 million a year at ESPN, because ESPN doesn't have very many people that anchor shows that draw very well. ESPN's been doing this. And they're owned by Disney, which owns, I believe it's ABC, which owns the Jimmy Kimmel Show. So Disney's heavily involved. It's either ABC or CBS, but Disney owns the TV network that Kimmel's on with his late night show. So Disney's put a bunch of pressure on ESPN. ESPN's put a bunch of pressure on Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee came out and sort of apologized, you know, because he was kind of in the middle. But then he came out and he ripped ESPN because Pat McAfee is a maverick, big-time maverick, and you're not going to control him, and ESPN's all about control. Now, let me be careful here because there are there's three things I don't talk about on this show. Number one, I don't talk about politics. Number two, I don't talk about religion. And then, of course, number three is obvious.
You do not talk about Fight Club.
That's right. You never talk about Fight Club. But here's the thing. ESPN used to be just sports. Well, a lot of people feel like they got involved in politics, and their ratings did this because if you talk about politics, you're going to tick off a big percentage of the people that watch your show. And that's just a fact, you know, regardless of which side you're on politics. Same with religion. So ESPN has been desperate to try to build up their ratings. Well, Pat McAfee was killing it on YouTube. And I don't watch a lot of Pat McAfee because it's like a 3-hour show. And I like the shorter form, 8 to 12 minute, 15 minute type stuff, because it's hard to watch a show for 3 hours. But he's been very successful and gets hundreds of thousands of views and has really made a killing at it. So ESPN thought, well, we don't have anybody over here that popular to really speak of.
How dare you?
So let's bring him over for a couple hours on our show on cable, and he can bring his viewers, and we'll start getting some people watching us again. Well, that didn't sit well with some of the people at ESPN because they don't want a guy that's just going to say whatever and bring a guy like Aaron Rodgers on because they don't like his style, so to speak, and they don't want somebody just saying whatever the crap they want, and they don't like profanity, and he occasionally uses profanity. So there's a lot of things going on there that are really problematic for ESPN. So Pat McAfee has accused one of the key guys there at ESPN of trying to sabotage his show, which he's probably right. And he accused a guy by the name of Norby Williamson, who is a big-time ESPN executive, of trying to leak negative information about him, about ratings and things like that. A lot of people probably don't like watching Pat McAfee on ESPN because they don't like ESPN now because they've kind of turned away from it. And I remember when ESPN was the end-all be-all for sports. I mean, we all watched Sports Center and we all watched the highlights, and they would, make up the names, Glenn Largemouth Bass or Eric Sleeping with Bieniemy and Chris Fowler and all those guys. It was must-see TV. And now I go here. If I want to know what's going on, it's all right here. I don't need ESPN anymore. And like I said, I like my sports to be sports. I don't want to hear a bunch of politics either way. And there's a lot of people that feel that way. But there's a lot of people at ESPN that look, if we're going to pay you $17, $18 million a year, you're going to toe the line, buddy. And if you know anything about Pat McAfee, that's the last thing he's going to do. As soon as you tell him to toe the line, he's going to take that line and wrap it around your neck. He doesn't give a crap. All you're going to do is make him mad, and he's going to be even worse to deal with. And Aaron Rodgers has made it clear he's not done with Jimmy Kimmel. And supposedly he's going on tomorrow's show, and he's going to really rip into the dude. Said he's getting ready to light a stick of dynamite or whatever, I guess theoretically. So he won't, and I don't see Aaron Rodgers backing down. That's probably the reason that Pat McAfee and Aaron Rodgers get along. They're both very mavericky and don't like to be told what to say or what to do, and then you'll usually do the opposite if you try to control them. So these two guys, there's just no telling what's going to happen. It's really going to be interesting. I may have to watch that. So anyway, I did want to cover this because it's a very interesting story, and we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers tomorrow, Pat McAfee, Jimmy Kimmel, and this Norby guy. And lastly, I want to talk about the transfer portal. Look, the Vols need an offensive tackle. We need a tackle and a guard. We just had Gerald Mincey leave and enter the portal, who was a decent, solid tackle, but he didn't want to play right tackle. And Zalance Hurd, who is this big 5-star tackle out of Louisiana, he was there for 1 year. He played probably about 4 or 5 games and played pretty darn well. And I was listening to my friends over at Blue Chip Breakdown, which is Bull and P, and they were talking about him, and they think he's terrific. They think he would be our best lineman if he came over to the Vols. And I trust their evaluations. They're both former players, and they do a lot of film work. And usually if they are high on a player, they usually pan out. Just like Coach Jay over at Talking Vols, he's the guy that was like, look, quit worrying about Nico. He's going to be great. He's going to perform well in the Citrus Bowl. Don't even worry about it. Well, he scored 4 touchdowns. So those are the guys that, they'll lead you down a pretty good path. So for me, Hurd would be a great get. And if we were going to pay all that money for Jordan Seaton, who was going to be a freshman, this guy's going to be a sophomore. And he's just as highly ranked as Seaton was. He was like the number 1 tackle in the country when he went to Louisiana. He was their top recruit. I think he'd be getting a better player because he's 1 year bigger, 1 year stronger, and he's already proven he can play. Now, he's behind some superstar linemen down there at Louisiana, and he doesn't like that. He wants to start. He could probably start for us. So if we're willing to spend some money on Seaton, we ought to be willing to spend some money on Hurd. And look, I'm just going to kind of tell you how it is. You only get so many generational type quarterbacks, and I think Nico's going to be just that. I think he's going to be very special. And he reminds me so much of Bryce Young, only at 6'6". And you remember Bryce Young at Alabama. He was 5'10", but he was the magic man. And I tell you what, Nico moves like him. He's not as quick, obviously, at 6'6", but he's super quick for his size. And he's got a great arm, and he makes good decisions. And yeah, I know he only threw for 150 yards, but he scored 4 touchdowns, 3 with his legs. And he threw a touchdown pass that literally, it was a dime. He threw a dime from 50 yards. And what happened was Ramel Keaton lost the ball in the air because of the sun, the way that stadium's set up. And it was the prettiest ball I've seen all year. I mean, it would have hit him like this. But he stopped running because he didn't know where it was. So he would have been over 200 yards right there. And had another touchdown, which would have been number 5. So we need to protect this guy, and we need to make sure he cannot be sacked 6 times like he was in the Citrus Bowl. That's ridiculous. We've got to block for him. And if you've got a chance to get a 5-star that's in the transfer portal, we need to get him. That's just a fact. And we missed out on the Adams kid out of Kansas, who I thought we had until I found out that Texas A&M was also involved. And I was like, oh, crap. You know, he had a great visit here, said it was amazing, loved the family atmosphere. But Texas A&M's got that. You are not going to outbid them. They've got that oil money, and they're going to get who they want.
Haven't you noticed? You got to be a man to play in my league.
It's just the way it is. I hate going up against A&M or Texas because you're not going to outbid them. Anyway, big game tonight. I wanted to talk about all this, and hopefully we need a tackle and a guard. That's just a fact, and they need to be plug and play. We've got to protect this young man.
Learn it, know it, live it.
Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all these big stories and, of course, my Vols. And if you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit this little button right here. It costs you nothing. And it helps me out. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you might enjoy based on your viewing history. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.